All right, I want to get right into the presentation. Thank you, Cassandra, for having me. Appreciate it. And all you guys for being here. Basically, what I wanted to do is kind of, for lack of a better term, recapture the narrative in politics. Because oftentimes you hear people use terms and they just use them interchangeably, and it kind of confuses the argument. You know, this person's a liberal, this person's a liberal, this person's a conservative. Back in the 1700s, the liberals were the conservatives, and you know, it just gets mixed up. You know, what does this mean? You know, who was a right winger, who was a left winger, and what does that mean? And I have a visual aid here to help us to clearly understand what that means, and we'll get to that in a second. But if you guys remember the Ray Rice incident with the Baltimore Ravens, you know, horrible incident where he and his now wife were fighting, and he hit her and knocked her out. You know, when you heard about it, it's like, wow, that's terrible, man, that's really bad. But when the video surfaced, when you actually saw what he did, that's when the outrage really flew off the handle. And that's what I want the visual aid to do, kind of accentuate, make it more demonstrative, what being on the right, being on the left looks like. And so, you know, that's what we're here today to look at this, and we're just going to talk about a few things, help you to identify what it is to be right wing, left wing, and what that actually means. Well, let's just take a look at what we have here. This is a chart that I created, and usually when I give this speech, I usually, you know, just kind of give a hand signal. This is the right, it's left. But I figured if you saw the colors, if you saw the words, if you saw examples of what hard left and hard right looked like, and individual liberty versus government, you know, it would give you a better picture of what we have. Well, let's start on the hard right. Can you hear me okay, Jonathan? No? Okay.
Sorry.
All right. On the hard right, you have, it's all red. And you've got 100% individual liberty, and you've got zero government. The blue represents government. So you've got zero blue on the hard right, individual liberty. That's where you have anarchy and chaos. Every individual is their own judge, jury, executioner. And we don't need that. That's an irresponsible form of governance. You need some government. You got to have some controls in place. Over here on the hard left, you've got 100% government. It's all blue. 100% government, zero individual liberty. And that's where you have socialism, communism, fascism, statism, dictatorship, martial law, monarchy, Nazism, Ku Klux Klan. Anything that takes away your individual liberty, that is the hard left. And that is what we don't want either. We don't want the extreme right, and we don't want the extreme left. We've got to have some government. Now let's look at what the left says about what their ideology is. Now, notice I don't have Democrat and Republican up here, and you'll see why in a second. Okay, the top. Rights are granted by the state and can be modified. Now, that top line corresponds with the bottom line here on the right. And that corresponding phrase is, God gave everyone the unalienable right of life, liberty, property, and the pursuit of happiness. So there's a diametrically opposed view from the left and from the right. Rights come from the state, and they can be modified. And on the right, your rights come from God, and they're unalienable. In other words, they can't be taken away because the state didn't give them to you. And they're yours because God gave them to you. Here on the left, citizens are subjects of and subject to the state. Down here, second from the bottom, government of the people, by the people, and for the people shall not perish from the earth. And governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed. Now, again, two diametrically opposed thoughts there. And that last phrase there, deriving their powers from the consent of the governed. Now, we complain a lot about our politicians, and we say this and that, and Congress has an ultra-low approval rating. But going back to this phrase here, deriving their powers from the consent of the governed. They're just powers from the consent of the governed. Now, at some point, we have to really look at ourselves, and we have to look at ourselves in the mirror And we really need to blame ourselves for what we see going on. We see a lot of the same things repeating themselves, administration after administration after administration. A few tweaks here and there, a couple of things are different, but pretty much an agenda is going forth. And it's an agenda of more government. And if the powers that our politicians receive are from the consent of the governed, then we are partly culpable. For those of us who participate in voting for the wrong people, are definitely responsible for what's going on. And we've got to see that we're on the wrong track, and we have to do something about putting the right people in place. For those of you who are Christians, Bible-believing Christians like myself, the Bible says, Proverbs says that righteousness exalts a nation. We have to have the right people that can clearly define what's right and what's wrong, and we need to have those people sitting in the seats of authority. When you have people that want to throw any modicum of right out, what's true, any foundation of righteousness, throwing that out, what are you left with? You have a faulty foundation, and you can't build on a faulty foundation. So the people who are lackadaisical, who aren't civic-minded, who aren't involved, who aren't engaged, those people have the ability and legally can vote. Unfortunately, they're very easily swayed and able to be persuaded to an emotional argument, to something that might sound right. But if you don't know how to dig deeper into the issues and the arguments to find out what's the behind the scenes here, what does this really mean? If I vote for this, what is this really going to do? We don't have a lot of people and enough people who can discern and understand the tricks of politics and understand what it is the politicians are saying and what the politicians aren't saying. What is the media hiding? What is the cover-up? What's the end game? What's the agenda? We don't have enough people who are savvy enough to understand the game that's being played. So we have to become more educated, engage, and help where necessary and where able our fellow man, our neighbors, our family, our friends, those who are in our sphere of influence, and help them to understand and be able to see through the fog that's being created by our politicians and by the bureaucracy and by the media. It's unfortunate that we have to go to these lengths to have legitimate government and fair government and balanced government, but these are rough times. We're living in unprecedented times, and we've got to do what we've got to do. We've all got to put a hand in and do our part to make things better. Third point, the collective and the greater good is what the left promotes. The right promotes the individual, accountability, and personal responsibility. Now, I agree wholeheartedly with that point because it kind of reminds me of the founding of this nation. You know, the original 13 colonies, created the federal government. The federal government didn't create the colonies created, the states created the federal government. And same thing goes for this point here. The individual is the important piece because you don't have a collective without the individuals. So we need to stress the individual because, again, there's no collective without individuals. If you say, well, we're doing this for the greater good, we're doing this for the collective, well, then you get lost in the collective. Then I don't know what you like, what you want. Because what might be important to you might not be important to me. What might be important to me might not be important to you. But what's important to you and your God-given rights of life, liberty, property, and the pursuit of happiness, that's what's the key. But too often, we look to these buzzwords and these talking points. Oh, well, they hate they want grandma to go over the cliff. They want children to starve. If you don't like this, then you're a racist. And they just come up with all these different words and tactics to scare people, and it has nothing to do with individual liberty. It has nothing to do with your God-given unalienable rights of life, liberty, property, and the pursuit of happiness. But again, we've got to be able to dig deeper than what they're saying and find out what their agenda is. What's their angle? That's the key. Number 4, increased size and scope of government. That's what the left promotes. I'm not saying that government's wrong. There's nothing wrong with government. as long as it's in its constitutional and proper place. Over here, point 4, decrease the size and the scope of government. Now, if you look at the Constitution does give parameters for government, but it's a very limited scope that the Constitution gives for the federal government. Very limited scope. So anytime somebody wants to increase the size of the federal government, increase the federal regulations, that's going against a constitutional mandate, and that's a left-wing agenda. Taxpayer-funded corporate and social welfare and bailouts, banker bailouts, industry bailouts, bailing out airlines, bailing out banks, that sort of thing. Over here, end corporatism and the welfare state, and promote private charity. Now, I know, and I'm probably speaking for you guys, but I won't speak for you. I know how to run my household and how to manage my money better than anybody else. And I sure as anything know how to do it better than Washington, D.C., running $17 trillion deficits and just spending like drunken sailors, giving my money, giving our money to people and to things that I don't necessarily appreciate, like, or want. And to say that giving money to GM or Bear Stearns or AIG or Chrysler or long-term capital management or whoever it is, for them to say that this is the best move for America is hogwash. And it's just emotional, and it has no base in sound economics, and it's not constitutional. There's nothing in the Constitution that says that we need to be bailing out banks. There's nothing in the Constitution. Look, and I'll say something in this Constitution, and it's controversial what I'm getting ready to say, and I hope you get this on camera. The government, regarding welfare, the government has no responsibility to the poor. Zero. No responsibility to the poor. None. You and I have a responsibility to the poor, and the poor have a responsibility to the poor, but the government has no responsibility to take care of the poor. Now, if you're a Bible believer, like I am again, you know, the Bible talks about family members taking care of their own. If not, you're worse than an infidel. That's what the Bible says. And then you're supposed to, if a man doesn't work, he shouldn't eat. There's other things that talk about why people are poor and that sort of thing. There are scriptures about laziness and being a sluggard and that sort of thing. But the point is that the government has no responsibility to the poor. I know that sounds hard, and if you take that one sentence out of context, it sounds like I hate poor people. I used to be poor. I've been poor in my life. But we just have to be able to put things in its proper context to understand what it is so we know how to fix it. If we don't, then the government will get as big as it is, and it will get even bigger. And we'll continue to throw money at it and continue to put energy into it, and it'll never get better. So until we understand where we are and what we have, we'll never come up with a solution that'll fix the problem. And as hard as you and I work day in and day out, you know, if somebody's going to spend my money, it's going to be me. And it needs to be me. If somebody's going to waste my money, I'd rather it be me. I don't want it to be wasted, but I'd rather it be me. If I'm going to put the energy to make the money, I'm going to waste it. And so I just believe that we need to recognize that growing government and allowing the government to use our money to buy votes, to purchase the votes from their friends and from special groups, it's counterproductive, and it has no benefit to you and I. So we just need to make sure that we're clear that growing the size of government and taking our money is not a liberty agenda. It's a government agenda. Government-run healthcare is a promotion is promoted by the left. The right says healthcare should be a contract between doctors and patients. Because a doctor went to school to learn his craft, to learn his trade, to understand medicine, to understand how the body works, to understand chemicals and that sort of thing. Why does he need the government telling him what to do? He already knows what to do. I don't know how my body works. To a degree I do, but not like a doctor does. So if I trust in his ability and his expertise, then he needs to tell me, and we need to have a conversation and let him examine me, and we can come up with some solutions, and I'll take his recommendations. If I need to get a second opinion, we'll go that route. But if he's the expert, why does the government need to tell me through an insurance company how I need to be treated? Why do we need those extra layers of bureaucracy? I mean, how is that helping my health care? Now, here's the other thing I want to say about health care. You know, when the first iPhone came out, you know, the price was through the roof. You know, and as they worked out the bugs, I mean, talk about anything, a television, you know, any technology that comes out. When the first bit of it comes out, it's expensive. You know, until they work out the bugs and figure out how it works, and then you kind of figure out where your price range needs to be. You know, the price comes down. You know, why is healthcare, you know, with all the technological advances we have and breakthroughs in medicine, why is the price going up? It should be coming down. But you've got too much bureaucracy, you've got too much government, you've got too many layers of fat involved in a sector of our economy, healthcare, and it's ruining people's lives, it's ruining sectors of our economy, and we really need to understand how detrimental this is to our well-being, as well as the well-being of our economy. And we've got to stop looking to the government to be the one that does all the problem solving. They know they are constitutionally responsible for a limited scope of government. And if you look at the Constitution, healthcare is not there. It's not there. No Child Left Behind is a left-wing agenda. That's a George Bush creation. I don't care why he created it, but it's got his name on it. On the right wing, local and parental control of government, local and parental control of education, private school, and homeschooling. Again, it's all about liberty. It's all about you taking responsibility for your actions, being responsible for the education of your children, and not the control of the government. Central planning, where the government controls the economy and dictates how it will run. Free market capitalism. It's a right-wing individual liberty agenda. Over here you have free speech zones. Right wing says original intent of the First Amendment. Gun control. Right wing says original intent of the Second Amendment. NSA surveillance, spying, eavesdropping, wiretapping. Original intent of the Fourth Amendment is what the right wing says. Deficit spending. We're up to 17 trillion. Balanced budgets. Fiscal responsibility. Increased taxes. Decrease taxes. Because once you decrease the size and scope of government, you don't need as much money. Labor unions. Right to work. Open shop. Now, there are a lot of different things you could have put in there. But this just gives you an idea of the difference between what the left wing looks like and what the right wing looks like. Now, the other point that I wanted to make about this is that, you know, and I'll just go back to the previous presidential administration, George Bush. No Child Left Behind, banker bailouts. There were times where he implemented free speech zones, NSA spying, deficit spending. You know, those are all earmarks of his administration. Now, he claims, and a lot of people in the Republican Party say that he's a conservative. Well, you've got to define what conservative means. What is a conservative? What does that mean? Because if you're telling me that he's a conservative, but he's promoting a lot of the same things, the things that Obama is doing currently is an offshoot of what Bush has done, then you've got to explain to me what it means to be left versus right, because left and right are diametrically opposed. They're opposite ends of the spectrum. And if they do a lot of the same thing, then I'm having a hard time understanding how one is left, how one is right, how one is conservative, how one is liberal. Now, let's look also at it and explain this. Let's look at this again. Okay, you've got on the hard right, you've got 100% individual liberty, 0% government. On the hard left, you've got 100% government, 0% individual liberty. Here in the moderate, I don't know if you can tell, but that's a purple, so it's a mixture between blue and red. So that's where the 50-50 folks are. 50% individual liberty or thereabout, 50% government, thereabout. You know, it could swing 45, 55, 55, 45, you know, but it's just that middle range. And anything to the left of that moderate is the left wing. Anything to the right of that moderate is the right wing. Not necessarily Republican or Democrat, but right wing versus left wing. We're just looking at identifying where the agenda lies. What's right wing, what's left wing. Now over here on the left wing, it's got degrees of left wing. You might have somebody who agrees with 10% individual liberty, 90% government, or 75% government and 25% individual liberty. Conversely, over on the other side for the right wing, you might have somebody who believes in 10% government, 90% individual liberty, or 25% government and 75% individual liberty. So I mean, and there could be some things on the left that you agree with, like you might agree with a little bit more gun control. Didn't say that's a good thing or a bad thing. I'm just saying you might like a little bit more gun control, but you might like, more taxes or something. And here's something else that might not go over well with some people, but that's fine. But speaking strictly off of this, and I'm not a fan of it, I'm just going to give it to you the way it is, though. There's a big fight in this country over a lot of issues. One of them being gay marriage and legalization of marijuana. Now, I don't support gay marriage. I don't support gay relationships. But let me ask you a question. If the government tells you how to live your life, is that a individual liberty, right wing, or is that a government, left wing? It's a, no. If the government tells you what to do, right, correct, that's correct. So everybody, down here at the bottom, everybody has the God-given unalienable rights of life, liberty, property, and the pursuit of happiness. That means I don't have to agree with what you do, just as long as you're not infringing upon my rights to life, liberty, property, and the pursuit of happiness. Now, I will say that I think it's unnatural. I mean, if you put five male dogs and 8 female dogs in the same pack, I doubt that any of those male dogs will try and mount the other male dogs. They're going to try and mount the females. And those male dogs are going to fight to get to those female dogs. That's just nature. I think it was Thomas Jefferson talked about, in one of his writings, he talked about God, the God of creation, God and the God of creation. In other words, look at nature. Nature tells you that God exists. And animals, they just react to their instincts. You will never see a female and a female try and have relations. It's just, unless there's something wrong but normal circumstances, that's just the way it is. Normal circumstances. So I'm just saying that if you are fighting the gay marriage battle, to me personally, now I already know the answer. To me, it doesn't work. I believe what the Bible says. I believe how the Bible teaches it. I believe how nature manifests it. But I'm not going to run to the government to tell them to stop you from being with whoever you want to be with. If you want to marry a donut hole, that's your business. Leave me alone. I don't care. Just don't get me involved in the middle of it. I don't support it. Don't ask me to come to your wedding. But I'm not going to tell people, I'm not going to tell the government, I'm not going to sick the government on anybody. I'm just not going to do it. Because I believe in more of an individual liberty agenda. I don't agree with cigarette smoking, but I'm not going to tell people, I'm not going to force people to stop smoking cigarettes. I don't drink alcohol, but I'm not going to stop people from drinking alcohol. It's just, I just believe that we need to be left alone and need to make the decisions for our own personal lives as long as they don't infringe upon anyone else's rights to life, liberty, property, and the pursuit of happiness. I know better. I know what I need in my life. I know what works for me. And what works for me might not work for you. And that's fine. You go your way, I'll go mine. I don't smoke marijuana, never have. But I'm not afraid of marijuana. If that's what people want to do, people do it anyway. I mean, we really just need to be honest. People are already doing it anyway. And one of the things that really bothers me about that argument is, the people who, a lot of the people who are against legalization of marijuana and so scared of it, they smoke cigarettes. They drink alcohol. I mean, they're just the biggest bunch of hypocrites you'd ever see. And I know that there is some benefit. I'm not a medical doctor, but I've read, there's some benefit to, the oils and that sort of thing. I got that. So I'm all open about having that conversation. So that doesn't threaten me. That doesn't bother me. I just rather people look to themselves and look to, what's right and their unalienable rights. Look to that first, versus looking to the government to tell you what you should be doing. I'm not against government. I really am not. I just believe that they don't have all the answers. I believe that you and I have all the answers. And where we don't have the answers and the government is warranted to do something, they should. But if not, then, leave it to the individuals. Leave it to the states to figure it out. And I think that a lot of people, they take the cop out and they come over here and they ask for the government because they don't want to be held responsible for their actions, whether they're right or wrong. I think people are afraid of liberty. I really do. I really do think people are afraid of liberty because if you've got, the thing about liberty and government is that they are, it's a zero-sum game with liberty and with government. In other words, if you lose individual liberty, it doesn't just disappear. It comes over into government. That power doesn't just disappear, it just reverts to the government. So if you depose yourself as a person who acts as an individual and is accountable for your own actions and exercises personal responsibility, if you refuse to act in that manner, then you are actually by default putting yourself in the collective department, and then you give the power to the government to manage how your life is lived. And that's not what God intended for us to do. He wanted us to live free and live within the confines of our rights of life, liberty, property, and the pursuit of happiness. Now, people can say all they want, Republican, I have to give the Democrats credit. At least they'll admit that they're left-wing. Now, they won't admit that they're socialists or whatever, but they'll admit that they're left-wing. So I appreciate at least being honest in that respect. Problem is that a lot of Republicans won't admit that they're over here as well. They want to just shout that they're conservatives and they're right-wing, but they're supporting a lot of what the Democrats are doing over here on the left. And like I said, the Democrats they will admit that they're here on the left. They don't have a problem admitting that. But they try and make it seem as though here on the left is such a great opportunity for all of us, and they dress it up and they put perfume on it and they put cherries and whipped cream on it and they present it to you like you're going to eat it and it's supposed to be great. Well, no thank you. I like the individual liberty message better, where there's less government. Not no government, but less government. And where those of us who believe in that agenda of more individual liberty, we've got to hold people to the fire. I never vote straight ticket. Never. If you vote straight ticket, that's kind of like, if you're married, you're married the first year, things are great, you guys are, married but kind of still dating, it's kind of spicy, still kind of good, years pass and it's like, year 3, year 4, year 5, it's just like, there's no attempt to impress, you don't have any fire, any flair, nothing's going on. It's just like you're just going through the motions, and I'm not trying to show you that I love you, you're not trying to show you that you love me, and it's just like we're expected to do this, so we do it. We can't do that. For those of us who have kids, if you have kids, you're the boss. And if your kids don't like it, well, there's going to be a problem. So that's how we should deal with our children. These are the rules. I'm the boss, and this is what you're supposed to do. And I'm doing this because I love you. Now, our politicians, we should do the same thing. I don't care what your platform is, Mr. Politician. This is my platform. And this is, if you want my vote, you have to co-sign on this platform and say this is what you're going to do. If you don't get my vote. I don't vote straight ticket. I know that, that's the lesser two evils. I don't play the lesser two evils game. I don't play that. I hold politicians accountable. And if you don't want to be held accountable, you don't get my vote. Because I can't let you skate and just get my vote and you didn't work for it. You didn't earn it. You got to earn my vote. They have to earn all of our votes. Whenever you vote straight ticket, you just give them a pass. That day's over, folks. If you want accountability in government, you got to keep these folks accountable. Go to town hall meetings, email them, bombard them on the street with your camera, talk to them, ask them the hard questions. If they don't answer, get them on film, take it back to your group and say, he skated, he didn't answer the question. And then you hold him accountable. And then if enough people hear it or see that, then he's going to have a problem, or she's going to have a problem. We've got to keep these people accountable. I will tell anybody, I don't care if you're independent, libertarian, Republican, Democrat, do not give your vote to anyone. Don't give it to anyone. It's never, it's not your obligation to give your vote away. People die for the right to vote. So you need to respect the right to vote, and you need to give your vote the due process of examining, scrutinizing this candidate and making him answer or making her answer the questions. And if they don't want to answer it again. If they don't want to answer, ask it again. Tell your buddies in the next group they go visit, ask him this, ask her this. Make them answer the question. Bombard them in the street. They call it, what do they call that when you bombard them on the street? I heard somebody say it.
Flash mob.
Huh?
Flash mob?
No, but, well, yeah, but no, that's not the word I was looking for. But, you know, some of the guys who don't like to be accosted like that, yeah, they say you're accosting them. Come on, man. Be accountable to me. Answer my questions. I'm not asking you anything illegal. I just want to know where your position is. Where are you running for? Why are you scared to answer? Why are you dodging the answer, the question? You know, what do you got to hide? So, but anyway, that's pretty much it. I just wanted to share a few things with you guys, and hopefully this gives you a good picture of the difference, because there should be a clear contrast between right and left. And hopefully, not just what I spoke, but this picture will give you a clearer understanding of what the difference is between a left and a right-wing agenda. Right-wing does not mean Republican. Left-wing does not mean Democrat. It's principles and where you stand on those principles. And there are Democrats that are on the left on some issues and on the right on some issues. And there are some Republicans who are on the right, the left, and on the right. But what you and I have to determine is, where are they in the grand scheme of things? Because just because you stand on your left foot doesn't mean that you're, you know, or just because, well, no, that's not what I was going to say. What I was going to say was, a lot of times the difference between the Republicans and the Democrats is that one stands on his left foot and one stands on his right foot. You know, they're kind of, a lot of times the Republicans and the Democrats, they're all part of the big government brigade. And they're complaining and crying and debating over who's going to drive to the store. Am I going to drive to the store, or are you going to drive to the store? They're all in the same car, but they're fighting on who's going to drive to the store. And so that doesn't work. It's time for a statesman. It's time for us to support statesmen, not politicians. Because as we go forward and the times are getting rougher and situations and policies are getting worse and worse, we're going to run into some bad times if we don't make some decisions. You know, the more we let that cancer sit, the worse it's going to get. It's not too late, but time's running out, and we need to make some hard decisions, folks. I appreciate you guys letting me speak. Does anyone have any questions? Looks like you got one, Robert.
Yeah. I'm just going to ask on the marijuana legislation stuff. How do you feel about, like for instance, I support medical marijuana, 100%. And I'm kind of back and forth on full legalization. I'm leaning for full legalization in Texas, and I just, what would be your opinion on that?
Well, again, if cigarette, I don't understand, if cigarettes are legal, again, I don't smoke,
Right.
But if cigarettes are legal, I don't see any medicinal benefit to smoking a cigarette.
Yeah.
So if cigarettes are legal,
Yeah.
why is marijuana illegal? Again, I'm not promoting it. I'm just saying, I'm trying I'm trying to find the balance here. I'm trying to find out, why are you so against this, but you're doing this? It just doesn't make sense. So I'm not afraid of the conversation. Let's talk about it. If every drug in the world was legal right now in America, I wouldn't touch any of it. Cocaine, whatever, heroin, it doesn't matter. If that's what you want to do, that's your business. I'm not going to judge you, but for me and my household, it doesn't work. And we're not going to do it. You know? But if that's what you want to do, as long as you don't come on my property, bothering my family, hey, I don't care what you do. And I'm just not afraid of the conversation. A lot of moral do-gooder Republicans are afraid of that conversation.
Absolutely.
You know? And I'm just not afraid of that conversation. I'm not afraid to be free. I'm not afraid of liberty. You know, I know how to conduct myself. You know, it's as simple as that. Anybody else? I'm done. Thank you. Appreciate it.